Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Body, Soul, and Spirit podcast. So excited to be with you guys this week. I want to talk about the topic of cognitive dissonance, something that I often see in many people. We struggle with it continually, and we don't quite put language to it. So I want to just go deep into this topic of cognitive dissonance, what it is, we're going to define it, and why it's there. And it can actually be something healthy, or it can be something unhealthy due to trauma or complex trauma that perhaps you have gone through. This is something I have seen in my own personal life. And I just couldn't make sense of it. I didn't know that my brain gets wired a certain way or why I was struggling to think a certain way. So let's dive right into it. What is cognitive dissonance? Cognitive dissonance is actually a mental and an emotional tension. So there's a mental and emotional tension, and it starts to occur inside of us when there are two beliefs that are conflicting each other, when there are values or even perceptions that are existing in the mind and in the emotions at the same time. Two beliefs, two thoughts, two feelings, two perceptions, two values that are existing inside of our mind at the same time. It's kind of that feeling that says, things don't really add up. You sense that one thing is true, but maybe perhaps another part of you insists that something contradictory is true. And your brain doesn't really understand this conflict. It doesn't like the tension. The brain perhaps doesn't like the tension in such a way that it's wired for internal consistency. It doesn't like this internal tension. So when cognitive dissonance, almost like two things feel true, when in fact one thing is a lie, when dissonance arises, the mind automatically is going to try to reduce the discomfort that's inside of us. And it tries to find a real truth, even if the real truth is really a lie. And it tries to resolve this tension as quickly as possible. That's why it's possible for you to start to believe a lie about yourself or others, when in fact it's not the truth. When you are healthy mentally, or you're on the journey to moving towards health and you seek it daily to be healthy mentally and emotionally, it's actually a good thing, because cognitive dissonance actually is going to lead you to this compass, this moral compass, or this value system compass. So it becomes your compass, because then you can decipher whether one thing is true or one thing is false. For example, let's say you told a lie and you say, yeah, I lied, but lying doesn't align with who I am. And so you are able to bring back the compass, your direction, in the direction that your life should be going, because that discomfort that you feel really is motivating you to correct something. So that's called an adaptive process. Your brain has it. But when you are not healthy emotionally, or we are not healthy mentally, it becomes quite destructive, this cognitive dissonance. Because now a person is forced to resolve this cognitive dissonance in a way that now protects them. It's called survival mode, but it's really not truth. So when you are healthy and you are in a healthy environment, or you are in truth, it really aligns you. But when you are perhaps a person that hasn't done the work, all the trauma that maybe you've been through, or you're carrying some complex trauma, then really it becomes conflict inside of you. Say somebody thinks, a child or maybe an adult thinks something's wrong. I am not safe. And other people around you are telling you you're fine, you're exaggerating. Or maybe you feel hurt or you're angry and somebody tells you, stop being so dramatic, you're too sensitive. Or maybe, you're told not to set maybe certain boundaries because perhaps it's not something that you should do. After all, you're selfish or you're a bad person. So now you have two competing realities, or maybe in your mind, your thought goes automatically to this lie. And then really truth is telling you otherwise. So there's this cognitive dissonance, this conflict internally. I think we've all experienced that. Now, when your brain hasn't resolved this cognitive dissonance and the lie feels like truth, it's really at the cost of believing your own perception. Why? Because perhaps when you were younger, you had a loss of attachment and you didn't have secure attachment. And so now you learn how to survive. You didn't have a secure attachment for whatever reason in your upbringing. You just didn't have something that was secure. There was no safety in your life. And so now your perception and the way you view life or how you matter in the world now equals survival. And so to stay connected, you try to resolve dissonance by sacrificing your own truth. And that happens often without us being conscious of it. So we conclude things like, there must be something wrong with me, or my feelings can never be trusted, or my perceptions are all bad, or there's something wrong with me, or if I feel something, it's probably just sin or some kind of weakness. But really, that's the psychological root of self-doubt. It's really the psychological root of betraying yourself. Those are all translated into survival modes. Now, when you look at your brain has a two-brain system. The limbic system, which is your emotional and survival brain, but it actually records the memories, early experiences, and it associates danger with disapproval, with rejection, or even punishment. That is our limbic system. And then we have the prefrontal cortex, which is our thinking brain, and it develops actually later on. And it's responsible for logic, for reflection, for reasoning. So when we have this ongoing trauma that hasn't been resolved yet, and we have this cognitive dissonance inside of us, the limbic system actually learns to be authentic is dangerous. We're not safe. And even in adulthood, when the prefrontal cortex knows perhaps like boundary setting or speaking up is healthy, the limbic brain actually feels like it's dangerous. Setting a boundary to the limbic brain that hasn't done the work of healing actually feels like setting a boundary is going to be dangerous. So this creates a neurobiological cognitive dissonance. The body screams, you're unsafe, you're unsafe. And the mind is saying, this is okay now, you're okay. So as we do this journey of healing gradually, we have to teach the limbic brain to trust new evidence of safety. And this alleviates a lot of the cognitive dissonance inside of our brains. Now, as adults, if we grew up resolving cognitive dissonance through self-denial, we just deny ourselves. As an adult, we might feel guilty for even just setting a boundary, or we might distrust our own emotions and our own instincts. I must be wrong. I must be wrong. People are treating me bad. Therefore, I must be bad. Or we justify or rationalize harmful behaviors just to maintain a false peace. Maybe you have a really harmful behavior and that's keeping you in a false peace. It's not really true peace. You think it's peace and you rationalize it. Oh no, I do this because of this and it just makes me feel better. But when in reality, it's not leading you to true peace. Experiencing this chronic, perhaps anxiety, the inner conflict, the self-doubt is all coming from a cognitive dissonance, perhaps. as an adult. Because in short, the brain's learned that lies feel safer than truth. So this healing that we have to undergo, this process of healing, entails us to resolve this cognitive dissonance, to start to feel safe again. It means to tolerate the discomfort of truth long enough for your nervous system to rewire itself. So the first step is you got to be aware. You got to notice moments when something inside of you says, this doesn't feel right. Instead of rushing to silence, pause. Observe the cognitive dissonance that's happening, the conflict that's internal. What are the two beliefs that are fighting inside of me right now? Pause for a moment and ask yourself that question. What are these two beliefs that are fighting inside of me right now? And which one is the truth? And then I want you to write them down. What do you feel? What I was taught to believe, and what do I feel? Now evaluate those two. Which aligns more? Let me give you a little bit of a truth that I do. What aligns more with love? What aligns more with truth? What aligns more with the word of God? What aligns more with what God has spoken over your life? And what aligns more with fear, control, shame, guilt? And that's a good way to decipher whether one is truth and one is a lie. See, the lie is always going to be rooted and align more with fear. It's going to align with control. It's going to align with guilt. It's going to align with shame. But truth aligns with love. Truth aligns with the word of God. Truth aligns with what's really the reality. Am I really in danger? Or has my brain been wired this way to feel like it's dangerous? Allow yourself to feel that tension without trying to fix it. The brain wants to immediately fix it. And that's why when it comes to cognitive dissonance, we typically tend to tip over to the lie. Allow yourself to feel the tension. Don't try to fix it because the brain doesn't like that tension. So it's going to try to resolve it. And immediately, this is why people tip over to the lie. This discomfort is your brain rewiring itself. You're teaching your brain and your mind, I can handle truth without losing my safety. You see, your limbic system needs repeated experiences of this. It needs to heal. So this is why it's so important and so key to remember that leaning towards a false peace can actually silence, or we think is silencing, cognitive dissonance, but it's just temporary. The only thing that's going to get rid of our cognitive dissonance and that internal conflict is truth. Every time you honor your gut, every time you honor that inner voice, every time you honor what God has spoken into your life, every time you really start to think inside of it, you're actually leaning towards an authentic self. That's why healing requires a lot of courage, because you must be willing to sit in the discomfort that trauma trained you to avoid. You're trying to avoid something, so you lean towards the lie. But that discomfort is not a sign that you're wrong. It's just the sound of your brain rewiring itself to tell the truth again. What is the truth? You see, cognitive dissonance is not really the enemy. It's just a signal that truth and falsehood are colliding inside of you. And when you learn to silence that signal, when you learn to just turn it off, you're going to lean towards the lie. But when you learn to heal, then you listen to it, to follow it through discomfort until you reach its alignment to peace, to integrity, and to truth. You see, healing begins when you decide that truth, not discomfort, will be your new compass. You know what this means? That sometimes we have to face the truths. And those truths are leaning and leading us towards healing. When you see or hear that internal conflict, don't rush into the lie immediately and want to fix it. I can't tell you how many people don't want to do trauma work. They don't want to do complex trauma work. They avoid it at all costs, and they're lying to themselves. The reason why people avoid truth is because their brain has been wired to immediately try to fix this discomfort. The minute they feel discomfort, the minute they feel like this discomfort of, oh my goodness, if I face the truth, then what does that say about me? Well, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's saying something about you. It may very well lead you to confront maybe some giants. It may lead you to maybe confront some things in the past, maybe some mistakes that you have made, but it shouldn't lead you to guilt. It shouldn't lead you to shame. It's supposed to lead you to love and healing if you're doing it right. In recovery, it's supposed to lead you there. This week, I want you to notice. I want you to identify the inner conflict that's been happening inside of you. That inner conflict that maybe, makes you feel a certain way. Don't try to resolve it right away. I want you to see it because there's going to be two sides of the coin. You're going to see one side that's leading you to anxiety and shame and guilt and sadness and a quick relief, which is a false peace. But I want you to notice it because that is not truth. And there's going to be another side of the coin that leads you to love, that leads you to truth, that leads you to a reflection, to healing, that leads you to safety, that leads you to comfort, that leads you to peace, a true peace, where you're not running from something. I want you to kind of just reflect this week. And I want you to just observe. And I want you to notice that feeling of cognitive dissonance. Write it down, pause, identify those two beliefs. Ask yourself, which one's rooted in love? Which one's rooted in truth? Breathe through all that discomfort. And then I want you to start to act according to the truth. Even if you feel strange, but I want you to act according to that truth. The more you do this, the less the old false peace feels like safety. And the more authentic peace becomes your new normal.